Gonzaga Nation rolls on with another episode of Coach's Show, this time with a somewhat new face to the program here in Spokane at Gonzaga, but he's no stranger to high-level basketball. Assistant coach slash director of basketball operations, if I'm getting the title correct, Jorge Sanz. Jorge, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's just get right into kind of your role in regards to what Gonzaga is. We'll talk about your past with learning the game in Europe, in your home country of Spain, but your current role with Gonzaga when they changed the rules from 4 coaches on the court to 6. That allowed you to really enhance your presence within the program. To explain what your role is.
Well, I've always liked to think of myself as a Swiss Army knife, like a soldier. So whatever's needed, I'm there for it. My first 5 years here have been more administrative in a large extent, more analytics, more off the court stuff, more scheduling. And this past season allowed me to be more on the court with scouting, more instruction, more coaching, more player development. That's actually what I enjoy, what I love doing.
You mentioned analytics, and like Adam Morrison and I have talked about B. Mike being kind of like Brad Stevens light, both his look on the bench as well as his demeanor. But he does have a strong emphasis in the analytics. Stephen Gentry and I go years back talking analytics. But that's one of the things that's really unique in the fact that I look at Coach Few as having a tremendous feel for the game. I haven't talked analytics as much with him as some of the other coaches, but when you take a look at analytics, what are the things that are important to you? And as assistant coaches, how do you guys present them either to each other or to Coach Few?
To me, the biggest thing with analytics, they have to be manageable. They have to be transferable. We, as assistants, we dive deep into them, but then the message to oftentimes Coach Few, for sure, players, it's very, very shallow, at least in terms of message. We don't want them thinking about analytics when they're in the court. We want them to know the reasons behind them, behind our coaching decision, behind our coverages, or what our purpose is, why we're doing things a certain way on the court. But it's more of the deep dive. So to the players, for example, it's mostly like OER, DER, offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, player tendencies. Now, at a coaching level, it gets deeper in terms of effective field percentage, their style of play, what favors what type of action versus another. Ball screens, do they, are they better passing out of ball screens and scoring, as a ball handler? How often do they hit the roll? Things like that. We dive deep, but then all of that does not get to the player.
Yeah. I think that's very similar to the broadcasting world. Is you take a huge picture and say there's 100 pieces that you learn about a team. You might only use 5 to 10% to break it down, and you find those 5 or 10 that are the most interesting in a broadcast, or 5 or 10 as a coach that will impact winning. Is that fair?
Absolutely, and most of the time, like the bulk of the work, it goes completely, not to trash, but you use it to make decisions, but they don't make it past your desk.
Yeah.
No question. Right? We analyze opposing teams' 3-point attempts, how they create those attempts. Well, sometimes the information is just inconclusive, like not random, but there's nothing that we can latch on to do one thing or the other. So absolutely yes.
How about, do you have a favorite analytics site or two that maybe, is accessible to the public, or maybe, because I know there's a lot of private analytic companies out there, but everybody hears the Ken Palms. They hear Bart Torvik's become, Evan Miyawaki, I believe, is another one, but then Synergy kind of combines video with the data. Is there one that or one or two that you really lean towards?
I lean I combine, actually, literally, Ken Palm and Synergy, because Ken Palm accounts for strength of schedule, whereas Synergy is all raw numbers. So depending who you play in the year, especially come to March, teams that have been different conferences just have not played significant opponents, and the information can be a little bit skewed one way or the other. Early in the year, same thing. Teams have played 10 games or 5 games. It's just not conclusive. But as you add games, I love them because of the strength of schedule. Everything it's pondered. So essentially, I have my own Excel spreadsheet where I combine both, and that's what I use essentially to normalize synergy information with Ken Palm information. That way, I can present data that's comparable.
That's one of the hard things when you really truly break down analytics at the college level, because there's 360 some teams and everybody's strength of schedule varies. Whereas opposed to the NBA, you've got 30 teams. You have a Western Conference that plays X amount versus same Western Conference, and you only play the Eastern Conference twice. So it's a lot more just straightforward with the analytics. So you have to take a deeper dive on the college analytics to really make it make sense.
No question. You touched on Coach Few relying on the eye test and then his experience and his. You definitely need that. And the first thing he asks, if I just present raw numbers, for example, a team plays 12% zone, his first question is going to be, what type of zone?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a 2-3 ball, 2-3 high wings or flat wing. Like now, it's a tandem or it's a regular. Like you definitely need to dive not only from a quantitative standpoint to get deeper and see the reasons why, but just to provide the context of not only what happens but how it happens and why with their injuries. So the games where they played most zone, well, yeah, they were missing 2 guys. They're the best. Things like that. You have to provide that context. Sometimes to just to include it, other times to just, they only do that when or because that other thing happened. So it's a way of, you definitely have to normalize and contextualize the data that, it's on paper, it's on your screen, but you realize why that's happening.
Yeah. So in regards to the new roles and the enhancement of the roles that you have at Gonzaga because of the NCAA rulings, you're able to now be on the court. You mentioned, being on the floor for player development is something that you love, and you're finally able to kind of work in that realm. Every coach has their own ideas about what's important. Now, Gonzaga conceptually has had a tremendous player development. They focus on the little things that over time, when you stack them together, make huge impacts. But when you as a coach look at player development, what does that encompass in your eyes?
To me, it's first of all, the approach is it's like 3 legs to it: off season, preseason, and in season. I think the player development never stops, but the approach to it does. I think off season, the way I look at it, off season is how can I expand the player's game. Preseason is, okay, how do I envision for this year, this season particularly, how can he help us the most? How do we expect him to help us the most? And then in season is, okay, against this particular opponent, they ice, they deep drop, whatever the coverage, whatever. What shots, what type of defense are we going to be in? What kind of coverage are we going to be on? How can I help him prepare for the next game? So that's like the big picture of how I envision it. But I think the ulterior, what has the foundation of play development is how do we play? How do we envision what's our style of play? How can why is this player here with us? How can we help him the most for him to help us the most? And then not only that, but beyond his career at Gonzaga, how can we make him better for his future after Gonzaga? So it's always a layer approach to where not only how can he help us, but how can we help him now in the future?
I think that's really insightful, because if you look at the amount of pros that have come out of Gonzaga, some of them are, you can see it in the evaluation, the recruiting, a Chet Holmgren or a Jalen Suggs. Like, as soon as they get a chance to have their name called by Adam Silver, their name's getting called. But then there's other guys.
Let's not mess it up.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's other guys that it's like, you as a coach and an evaluator and a recruiter, you have to see something that maybe others don't. And then you have to pull that out of them and add to it while they're on campus. I look at Corey Kispert as a great example. I saw him play in high school at Gonzaga team camp. He was a tremendous shooter. Freshman year, he wasn't a great defender. He got better in those areas. Couldn't really do, and I'm not bashing on Corey, but it's just the evolution of a player. Pick and roll reads weren't there. Cutting off the ball wasn't there. By the time he was a senior, his three-point shooting, which was the thing that caught your eye, was one of the best in the country. But he read screens, so if you take that away, he cuts. He can cut from that 45 opposite angle on the wing to make plays. And then he was, I can't say really good in a ball screen, because those are the elite players. But he was good for his position in a ball screen. I guess in a roundabout way, how do you evaluate or what do you look to share with high school kids that are considering Gonzaga in regards to, there's 2 different approaches to get guys where they want to be?
Absolutely. First, I think is the track record always helps. Our track record with players that have been here, very very successful players. Some of them, you mentioned the Chet and the Jalen's, prior to coming to Gonzaga, that we fine tuned for the 8 months we're going to be here. We expect them to be here, and then launch them into the NBA career. But for most of them, it's going to be a longer process. So the number one thing in my opinion is make sure the expectations are aligned between what we as a staff and as a program see for them and what they and their environment see for themselves. Because the moment their expectations don't match, that there's friction. There's going to be friction. That's where someone's not going to be happy, right? But it's a matter of laying out a plan from a developing standpoint, from a development plan basketball-wise, but also in terms of timing. Not only what we're going to do, but when we're going to do what. How do we envision helping first year, second year? Guys in their roles, position-wise or development-wise, how they were able to help us and contribute year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Or, hey, can we beat that? Can we beat that timing? Can we, where are you willing to meet us in terms of, how good do you see yourself? What's your goal? Yeah, NBA is everybody's goal. It's realistic. How early? How late? So things like that, I think it's the number one. Make sure that we're both sides are working together and expectations are match. And then it's a matter of are you willing to put the work? Like guys that like everybody that has come through this gym, like they have been willing to put the work, and that's sometimes for a high school age player. That's the biggest, the most eye-opening realization. It's like, okay, like it's work. Yeah. Like it's every day. It's building habits. It's building routines. It's the time that I'm not thinking about getting better. Somebody else is. Mm-hmm. So that competition within our program and with outside our program, it's what helps. Always. Iron sharpens iron, and that happens also within the walls of this gym. So,
back to the analytics side, in regards to maybe players that you've come across in your stint at Gonzaga, is there one player that maybe dives into analytics more so than others?
Let me think. I think Chad was always asking, and I mean he was such a basketball junkie, like to a fault. Like he was always asking to know and asking to watch and asking to Andrew Nemhart, also different approach, but he was also trying to figure out reasons why things were happening. Corey was very studious as well. Corey Kispert. Who else? I'm thinking. Even Drew.
I was just gonna say, give us Drew's analytic approach, because he to me is a throwback that just was like the old school YMCA hooper that give me the ball, I'm gonna go play, and wasn't like probably overly analytic. But I would love to hear the breakdown on Drew and maybe what he valued or asked in those realms.
The thing with Drew is that maybe, and I said it with all my love and all my heart. From the outside, he may perceive as he does not care as much about some things, but he's a winner. Yeah. He's a competitor, and he wanted that edge. Yeah. So whether it may not be in analytic terms of OERD or what, it will be like, what's going on? Like, how can I? Why is this guy always like why? He would ask those questions. That this is part of analytics. Like a player, not just Drew, but in general, they may not need to hear the math behind something, but they understand and absorb things significantly better when they understand the why behind that math. So part of our job, and is translating the figure, the number, into the reason or the action or the element or the tool for them to accomplish the goal. So with Drew, again, he made look like he did not care about something. He wanted to win. He wanted to make it happen. It was a lot more beyond the just give me the ball and I'll do work. Like when are they doubling? When is it on the dribble? Is it from the baseline? Is it coming from the big? Things like that. Like, what's going on? Why don't I have enough space? He would consume all that. He wanted all that.
So let's touch a little bit on European style basketball, professional at the NBA level and college. And we've touched on analytics, so let's kind of keep it in that realm. Analytics have become a bigger thing. In the NBA, it's threes, mainly corner threes. It's paint touches, foul touches. The mid-range has slowly gone away. Some of the better teams in college have done that. Alabama made the Final Four this year. They are free throws, paint touches. If you collapse the defense, it's spray it for threes. If not, it's 8-foot and in shots. What's the European approach to that now? Because I played 2 stints in Europe, and analytics weren't at the forefront yet. But now, obviously, you have got your foot in both worlds, which we'll talk about. But what do you see there?
It also trends that way. The approach is similar. It's very similar. However, there are a couple factors, rules, 3-second defensive rule primarily, athletic ability, and talent. And I think what I'm going to say now, it holds true to any type of basketball. I think we're all looking to for that small advantage that forces defense to react to where now you play through that for a larger advantage. Whether it's a closeout, whether it's an open shot, whether it's a lob dunk. So like I think those rules that I mentioned, like 3-second rule, the longer distance 3-point line, allows more space. Now, talent, how good are the shooters surrounding you? How good talent is the ball handler that can create that advantage? Is it or a coach? You create that advantage through cuts, through off-ball screens. Is it ISO? So independently of how that small advantage is created, we're looking for that little edge that creates a chain reaction into that larger advantage, right? So part of the reason why, not the only, but we probably in Europe don't have the athletic ability or talent like that other players here in the States, especially particularly in the NBA, have. So that's why it's less ISO. You have to create the defenses are a little more compact because of the 3-second rule, defensive 3-second rule, and in the NBA is more drop coverage. You're trying to disrupt a little more defensively. So you need a little more fluff, a little more false action to get into the main action. However, college you got 30 seconds shot clock. And FIBA is just 24, just like the NBA. So, for example, now you're putting everything together, right? We're evaluating guards from Europe. They look for one action to make something happen. Because by the time you enter that action, like you cannot go side to side, with false action. So you're looking to create that initial, that chain reaction faster, right? So I think that's the main difference in style. I think that the purpose, the philosophy behind it is the same, is to generate that chain reaction. But how to come, do it? It's the main difference. So.
So you spent time at FAU before you came to Gonzaga. You've got your foot in the coaching world in Spain, representing your home country, Spain, and as a coach in many different FIBA events. When you look at the evolution of the college game, I think Gonzaga has been kind of at the forefront of playing similar to European teams. Continuity ball screen, you mentioned that false action to move the defense to get to the action you really want. Besides Gonzaga, is there another college program when you watch film that kind of has a true sense of playing in that style?
Well, now I think UConn. They have studied and implemented significant amount of layers from FIBA, from not just, I don't think we should claim as European, but like more FIBA style, because of what I just mentioned. Like it's you need to move the pieces before generating that initial advantage, right? That chain reaction. So I think UConn, obviously Arizona, very similar to us in that sense. Purdue, I like the way that Coach Painter, especially with Edie, such a unique player because of his size, but the way they structure their offense around. Well, they used to. Now he's gone, but around him. But I do love the way UConn, like you don't know what type of action is coming.
Yeah.
The entry, the alignment is very similar, and then they have multiple options for shooters, for ball screen, for post touches. So like you just don't know until the very end of the action what's coming.
Yeah.
They base a lot of their offense in reads on what the coverage is, on ball, off ball, which you should. We do the same, but you put together those layers, more than sets, just layers of actions. They make it in many different ways to the last final same action, but you just don't know what's coming. And I think that's what makes it really hard to guard.
So give us a little bit of your background. You grew up Zaragoza, Spain. Did you play, or how did you fall in love with the game of basketball? Was it a coach? Was it a parent? Was it a friend? And then how did you grow into coming to the States to be at FAU, which now translated you to come here to GU?
Born and raised in Zaragoza, Spain, in a family it's a basketball family all along. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. My brother is 8 years older than I am. My sister is 6 years older than I am. My dad played professionally, call it what you want to. At that time, there was no professional basketball like that. But he played at a good level. And then my dad founded. He was basketball junkie. So on his spare time, which is very common in Spain, and I'll get back to it, but a lot of the youth and development, most of those coaches are volunteers. There's some standards of coaching degrees and how to learn how to coach, and then but once you're responsible for, with teams, it's usually a volunteer basis. So my dad, out of sheer vocation, he was and passion for basketball. He helped found both the professional basketball team in Zaragoza, the men's and the women's. So then you fast forward. My brother, my sister are born. They playing basketball for all their lives. I'm the youngest by far. So I was the guy that grew up in the gym just because of my dad with meetings or whatever, or my brother's practice, my sister's practice. I grew up doing homework pretty much on the baseline.
Yeah.
I was the kid that if you played, you've seen it. During timeouts in Europe is very common. Yeah. There's timeouts going on, so huddles, and there's kids playing. I was that guy. I was that kid playing. I grew up with the basketball in my hand. I played for a little bit. I was smart enough to figure out that I wasn't going to make a career in playing. But what was my senior year of high school, I came to the States. I went to McKeesport High School in very close to Western Pennsylvania, very close to Pittsburgh. My brother had done the same. My sister had done the same. So I always had I was always looking forward to that last year of high school coming to the States. But none of us really knew that you could actually play college basketball. It was 30 some years ago. Sure. 30 years ago. My siblings were 30 years ago. I'm 40 now. So about 20 some years ago. We all came here, did exchange student, played, and then went back. But when I went back, I did have the thing behind my, I started seeing college basketball on TV in Spain around that time. And then that's after I got back, I realized, well, I wonder if I could get involved in some way with college basketball. I love the age group. I think it's older enough to where guys have a knowledge of what they're doing a little bit. They know their purpose of they know enough of what's going on in the court. But for the most part, it's not quite professional basketball. Like there's still a lot of room for growth. So I love that age group. And that's where, after a few years, I went to coach in Spain. And after I stopped playing basketball myself, I missed the locker room. I missed the game. And that's when I tried to figure out, okay, how can I get involved with it? And so I paired how can I get involved with the game, but also that thing that I have for basketball in the U.S. And that's when after I was like 25, 26, my then girlfriend, now wife. So I was like, hey, what if we try to, figure it out in the States and see if I can coach in the States. just because of numbers.
Yeah.
I knew a little research. I knew there was 300 some schools in Division One. Same for Division Two. I was like, all I need is one job.
Yeah.
So essentially, you fast forward. 16 months later, we were in the States, and I was. I think there is an element of luck in everything we do, and I think in everyone's career. Sometimes it takes multiple steps to be able to be presented with that opportunity, with that luck. So once in South Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida, I had to retake some classes for my degree to be accredited here in the States. So essentially, I was going to class at FAU. And I met someone from the team, and you should come to the offices, and told my story. And that's how before the season started, I essentially became the volunteer video coordinator.
Yeah.
And to me, volunteering wasn't a problem because, first of all, I was going to class.
Yeah.
But I grew up with volunteer coaches. Like my whole life was people that had their jobs, and they were so. That's how it started. They gave me a Synergy account. They gave me a Sports Code account, and they gave me a laptop. And that's more than any club in Spain, can ask for, especially at that time, unless they're a pro team. So that's where I started. I knew nothing about conferences and stuff, but my wife hadn't moved yet to the States. So essentially, I was spending all my time in the gym. Had no cable, no anything in the apartment. So when I was during the evenings, I saw players would come back to the gym to shoot on their own. So I started rebounding for them, and then developed a relationship, within the first few days and weeks in the season. So just with no time, just putting them through workouts.
Yeah.
They were asking me for workouts.
Yeah.
You fast forward and 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I have 8 guys coming in every night. Well, this is good. I hadn't. Great. This is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So then that year we won the league. When I'm going to NIT, and that's how one of the assistants took another job. The ops guy got promoted to assistant, and I got offered the ops position at FAU, and so that's how it started. Like a little bit of luck, but again, I always say that wouldn't have happened if I didn't decide to, in a way, to create my own path by packing my bags, our bags, and mine and my wife's, and moving to the States, right? So from then it was I moved on from ops. I became an assistant at FAU. It was 2 different staffs, but I guess after 4 years of my first 4 with Mike Jarvis, we got let go. Then Michael Curry became the head coach. He had played in not only in the NBA but also in Spain, uncontinental Europe for a few years. So he actually valued the international experience and background, and so he retained me. So I was an assistant there for 4 years as well. So that's essentially that allowed me to possibly to recruit and go back and essentially branch out in the recruiting world with covering all the FIBA events, and essentially what I had witnessed as player and growing up and stuff. Now it was as a college basketball coach, being able to do that recruiting for FAU.
No, that's awesome, because I know every coach's path is different to get to where they're at, and knowing the value of certain things with European FIBA basketball is different than the States. Many times of how to get into it or how to stay in it. Touch on really quickly the difference, since your family was involved in youth basketball way up to the professional level in Spain. The difference of development of a player from the youth in Europe to the youth in the U.S. Because I've got a couple boys. I see there's a lot wrong with development in the U.S., namely too many games, and not emphasis on the team aspect of things. I'd love to hear your take.
Well, first off, the caveat is I've coached college here in the States. I haven't been an active part of true youth basketball here. I hear stories. Stories, but I haven't been active part of it. But from what I know from what I've lived, experience in Spain, I think that one of the biggest, and you touched on it, was differences is the number of games. like not a knock on AAU, but I've covered recruiting all these events here in the States. There's a lot of games. There's probably too many games in a day.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. So over there, it was mostly 3, maybe 4, depending on the level, but 3, 4 practice per week in a game during a weekend. As age goes, as you move up, and level and age group determines if it's more you're more involved or less. But for the most part, it's 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and then the game during the weekend. What our club did, and it's very spread out. It's very much done all over. But certain guys from each age group will Sundays, and my dad, I hate to say it, but my dad created for our club was Sundays was like an academy. So a couple of guys from each age group would just train together. Specifically, like skill development. No, it wasn't position wise. It wasn't like, it was just like it was straight skills. But I think the biggest factor that I see is teaching how to play together from a young age. For example, we had, and this wasn't because we putting it on other teams and beating them by so bad that now we want to show off. But there were times where I remember my coach, talking in the middle of the game, we were up 20, whatever it was, talking to the other coach, say, hey, no offense, next quarter we're going to try not to dribble, not to show off, but so our guys can work on stuff, sure. Right? So we used to do that. I remember stories a little older than I am, but Pau Gasol, not playing point, but at almost 7 feet tall, age 15, 16, he wasn't the prospect that ended up being 3 years later, but he was forced to bring the ball up the court, turning it over. So at that level was not, we keep score, but coaches understand and clubs understand that at that level, it's not just wins and losses. Competition is an active element of development of basketball players in sport, no question, and the goal is to win. But there's no value oftentimes by just beating teams for as much as you can. You're getting not much out of it. So also there's you always play for club. You rarely play for your school, for your high school, or most players only play with one team, and they'll play for, one game a week. Depending on the level, that team may play, or players may play up. And that's where, again, you're still forced to here. I hear sometimes with players, you're holding guys later, so that you're physically more gifted at the time that you're playing at a certain level. Over there, it's the opposite. So that physical development usually happens later, or after the skill development for some of those guys in Europe. But it's I mean, I remember my sister. She was 14, 15, and they were playing in the professional.
Wow.
Her whole team was playing in losing most of the games, but it's you were not developing skill set against cones or against a pad. It was against in that case ladies that were 6 years, 8 years older. I remember being 17, 18, playing with 25, 26-year-olds. And you learn a lot.
I mean, I've always adhered to, if you're the best player at your current gym, go find another one and kind of challenge yourself to get better.
I remember the first time, I know it wasn't the first time, but I played up and I got stripped 3 times in a row. I was trying to set up a play, I got stripped 3 times in a row. And I was not subbed out.
That wouldn't happen in American basketball, that's for sure.
Time it was cold, and I was like, all right, head down. All right, this is it. Now I'm gonna, and the timeout was called to say, you're fine. You need to figure it out. You need to figure it out. So
I love that approach. Let's stay on Spain basketball. Give me your 3 best players of all time in regards to Spain basketball. I've got one guy in my mind that I was a teammate with for 1 year. I'm curious if you throw him on that list.
All time
Spain basketball.
Pau.
Okay.
Has to be, and I hate I like
Yeah, put you on the
ranking.
spot. I
No,
know,
and I hate-
especially because you're with the Spain national
Yeah,
team
no,
too.
I hate
Yeah.
rankings in general. Pau has to be. Juan Carlos Navarro has to be another one.
Oh, he was good. I remember guarding him. He had a unique game. Like
He was
he
awesome.
would shoot like it was in between a runner and a floater, like
La Bomba.
18, 20 feet out, and you're like, what the hell is he doing? And whack, whack.
He was. I remember a quick anecdote on him. I remember a clinic with the national team. That the coach, he was his coach, their coach when they won gold in the U18 World Championships back then. I think it was U18. He was talking about range, shooting range. So essentially, the coach was asking, he was telling the coaches there, said, hey, ask your players what their range think, it is, because they usually, overly optimistic. So he was saying that, well, except when you coach Juan Carlos Navarro, because I asked him what his range was, and he was half court, or like a few steps, and he was like, well, prove it. So he shot from what now Steph Curry shoots, and he made it. So well, I guess you can shoot from there if you want. So, but yeah, that he had la bomba. We call it la bomba. Which is, that floater. It was 1 foot, primarily 1 foot, but like he was going right, going left, wrong foot. He was just shooting threes from that spot. Like, it was awesome. But third one, I might have to go, and you did put me on the spot, but I might have to go with Ricky Rubio.
Yeah.
Because talk about development and talk about, at age 14, he was killing it at his age group. So what they did was just put him as high as he could compete, and that was in the ACB.
And for people that don't know, that's the NBA in Spain.
That's
and like 4 of those teams are in the EuroLeague, I think.
That's
right?
arguably the second best league behind the NBA, and obviously not counting EuroLeague as a. But yeah, so what he did. Now the expectations that he grew up as a person, as a player from age 14, 15. He met most of them. So I think it's a beautiful mind, beautiful basketball mind. I love him as a player. I love what he stands for. I think those three, and you probably want to mention somebody else, and I'll be, oh, how can I forget?
Well, there's a lot of good ones, but the one I was thinking, and I would imagine he's not in the top 3 all time of Spain, but I was teammates with Sergio Rodriguez for a year.
Another one.
And
yes.
we kind of had a friendly rivalry because we were both backup point guards with the Blazers, and our games were completely different. Like, I was more of a scorer. His vision and his passing would be like, in practice, he's like, what the hell did you just see?
It's incredible.
And he would make a play. And he went on, I think he played 5 years in the NBA, but he's carved out an unbelievable career in Europe.
No, it's incredible. And it's just, for any time you transition from one basketball to another, there is a learning curve. And for some of these guys, it happened to Juan Carlos Navarro, and he was one of the best in Europe. In my opinion, one of the best in Spain all time. Essentially, his role in the NBA became very, very limited. No knock on anybody, but that's, he essentially was a spot-up shooter, where he was so used to creating, and it's different basketball, different athletic ability, different physicalities, different everything. So players have to adjust, or if they can, or as much as they can, and then decide what type of basketball is best for them in their careers. So.
Well, Jorge, there's a lot of great stuff. We're going to have you on again. Not sure what your schedule is, but maybe right before the Olympics, because I know you've spent time with the Spain national team. I know Coach Few is going to be part of the Team USA staff. That might be a great time for you to break down the European game a little bit more. That'd be a lot of fun. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Awesome. For Gonzaga Nation, the Coaches Show, Jorge Sanz, I'm Dan Dickow.